Okay.
Hi, come on in, come on in.
Hey guys, welcome, good morning, welcome to another installment of Curly Girls. I'm Anne-Marie, and you know I do private wine tastings and after hours corporate events for Wine Shop at Home, here with my gal pal, Gina.
I'm so glad she's back from South Africa. My Tuesdays have been weird. Gina, your favorite foodie and custom baker from Gina's Kitchen. And we are here in with a special
We
guest.
are on location in
Two real special
DC.
guests.
We have two special guests today, so we really lucked out. We are in Washington, DC. We are at the Cheese Studio. Alice Bergen is owner and head cheesemonger of CheeseMonster. Alice, thank you so much for having us. Thank you for entertaining us. I know that you're super busy. You've got classes galore.
And her hands
and
are
a baby.
full.
Yeah.
Little Olive, we'll be honest, this is take two. Olive's asleep now.
Alice didn't
But
like
you're
your-
going to
yeah,
see
Olive
parts
didn't
of our first go round.
She was not asleep.
She was not asleep.
Awake and
She
grumpy.
wanted to tell us all about what she didn't like about the wine and cheese.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She's very opinionated.
So here we are, take two.
So we thought, since we love cheese so much, we know that you guys love cheese. We're like, oh my gosh! I'm like, Alice, can we just
And
come out and
why?
hang out with you? So that is what we're doing here. So Alice, we just have to ask you, like, first of all, tell us what we're drinking. Tell us what we're eating.
I'll
So we
hold your
have.
glass.
Oh, thank you.
I'll have a
Yes.
glass.
Cheers! Here's to cheese.
Oh, my
and
hands are
babies.
full, but
yeah.
in spirit. So we are drinking a cava, a brut cava called a Vino from Spain.
Oh, I could have reached it.
Yeah, so my business partner is the wine side of the business. I am the cheese side of the business, so she can tell you way more about this than I can. But I picked up a couple tips here and there, and one of the things I learned from her is that if you like champagne, which I
Yes,
personally do, yes, cava is a really fantastic champagne alternative for not quite as crazy of a price point.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's made in a similar method. You get those teeny tiny bubbles. You get that nice sort of like toasty brioche sort of flavor that everybody loves. So we've got this lovely cava.
Oh my gosh,
which,
it's delicious.
yeah, I love personally. And goes so well with cheese.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us about these cheeses.
So we have
Gina,
those-
can you
I'm going to hold them
Yeah.
up. Okay. And the cheese board was like fuller in our first take.
We made
It's
it
really good
heavy,
cheese.
heavy thing.
Yeah.
We're not gonna
Sorry,
say
my bad.
if we
yeah.
had any.
Yeah, but it disappeared magically. So starting at the top, that big leafy guy, that is a cheese called O'Bannon. So it is based on a French cheese called Banon, which is a fresh goat's milk cheese that's been wrapped in brandy-soaked chestnut leaves. So the brandy sort of
So fancy.
yeah, it's very fancy. It comes wrapped up like a cute little package, cute little present. And the brandy kind of acts as a way to make the cheese a little bit less acidic. It sort of alters.
It is very smooth.
It's super
Yeah.
smooth. It kind of makes the texture a little bit pudgy, not quite as crumbly as like your usual
Yeah.
goat cheese.
Agreed.
Good
Agreed.
word.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pudgy.
Unfortunately, you can't get Banon in the U.S. because it's unpasteurized, and cheeses that are aged less than 60 days have to be pasteurized in the U.S. That's the rule. So instead, the folks at Capriole Creamery in Indiana decided to make their own version using pasteurized goat's milk cheese.
Is that what this is?
And that's what this is. So this is O'Bannon as opposed to Banon.
Okay.
Ah.
And it
okay.
is wrapped in chestnut leaves, but these chestnut leaves have been soaked in Woodford Reserve as opposed to
Did you hear
brandy.
that? Woodford Reserve.
Not too
Yeah.
bad,
Mhm.
because that is their local spirit.
Happy
Ooh,
place.
flop. Okay,
Here she
She's
comes.
like, no. No,
is she?
She's not.
Or she's asleep? You never know with babies. Are you
It's okay.
sleeping?
Oh, she's gonna wake up and say, "Not you two again."
There we go. So they're right near the Kentucky border. Right near Woodford Reserve is made, so that's what they use, and it is delicious.
Yeah, it is.
So that's our
It is.
goat, and then our sheep is the one on the bottom. That is Essex Street Company feta from the island of Lesbos in Greece. Most people, when I talk about this feta, are like, "Who cares about feta? Feta's boring. It's something you just put on salad."
Guilty. I totally thought that.
Yeah,
This is
100%.
not boring.
Couldn't
This
be
feta
boring.
is
Not
not
bad.
boring.
No, this is sheep's milk, so it's got more fat and more protein, a little bit more creaminess going on.
Happiness.
And then it also, the only salt that they use for this feta is from salt flats that are right next to the farm. So you get a little bit more oceany, briny kinds of notes in it. It's
So
not
good.
just sort of like straight table salt kind of flavor. So
Yeah,
it's
really
much more nuanced and interesting. And yeah, I'm a little obsessed
I had
with it.
no idea, honestly, Alice, I had no idea that I would be snacking on a feta.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, where's the
It's
cheese?
so
Like,
good. Yeah, it's so
It's
tasty.
so good.
It's
Really
like
good.
really easy to eat a lot of that cheese.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We have a little bit more
And
to
then
taste
who's
later.
the guy in the center?
And
Who
the
is
guy in the
that?
middle, that is a cheese called Schnebelhorn, which is a super
Schnebelhorn.
fun name. So that is a cow's milk cheese from the Alps in Switzerland. So it is similar to cheeses like Appenzeller or Gruyere. It's actually based on, I think the recipe is an Appenzeller based recipe, but they add extra cream to it to make it extra creamy, obviously.
Very
So it's sort of rich and decadent, got nice sort of like winey, nutty sorts of flavors.
And you're saying that, like, so one of the characteristics of this being close to like a Gruyere is the nuttiness, is a familiar.
Exactly.
Because the Oppen.
Yeah, Appenzeller.
Okay, Oppen.
Yeah.
Whatever. Okay.
Yeah, or even like Gruyere has that kind of like characteristic
Wow.
nuttiness. You basically like think about sort of flavors you would find in like a fondue. That's sort of your typical Alpine kind of
Okay.
profile.
Okay.
So yeah.
That is fantastic. So I got to go back to the beginning. How did you get started? Have you always been like a foodie,
Food person?
cheesy, whiny?
I mean, I've always loved food as like a hobby. I come from like a very food-oriented family, so we've eaten a lot of cheese in my life.
Love it.
But I moved to DC initially because I was a political science major, and that's what you do
That's what
after
you do.
college.
Yes, here's the place
Yep,
to go.
exactly. But I always had food jobs on the side because DC is very expensive. So I started off in specialty coffee. And had a job where they sort of like taught me to taste on a more professional level, you know, in terms of like finding flavor notes and learning about terroir and learning about different producers and regions and all of that kind of stuff. And that sort of turned me on to like professional food stuff a little bit.
Okay. Wow.
And I sort of slowly, not so slowly, came to the realization that I cared a lot more about that kind of stuff than I did about my day job.
Yeah.
So so eventually I got a job at a place that had a coffee counter and a cheese counter, and then the cheesemonger quit.
There had to be like no turnover there, but I think you're
You'd
about to
be
prove me wrong.
surprised.
Really?
You'd be
I was like,
surprised.
coffee and cheese.
Yeah.
I'd still be there.
I love that. I really not love that job.
The head cheesemonger left like 2 weeks after I started, and they were kind of scrambling to find someone, and I was like, I feel like I can do this, and so I just kind of jumped in, and that was about 8 years ago, and then
look at you now.
yeah, I had a bunch of different sort of cheese jobs and food jobs, and then opened CheeseMonster about 2.5 years ago.
That's awesome. So tell me what you guys do here, because you're
Yeah.
not open to the public except by appointment.
Right.
So your setup here is for events.
Yeah.
It's for classes.
Totally.
But you also go to people's homes. So how does all this work?
So we started CheeseMonster. CheeseMonster is originally a mobile business. We've only had our brick and mortar studio space since April.
Okay.
And so, you know, we originally were more a cheese board catering company that would go to people's homes or offices or event spaces or wherever and set up these big, beautiful
Okay.
cheese boards,
Okay.
or do cheese education classes in people's homes or offices or whatever. So
Okay.
cheese 101 class, cheese and wine pairing class, cheese board building, that kind of stuff. And then we have the studio space, which is great because it's allowed us to have a space. Well, one, have a space that's sort of like designated prep kitchen area. You know, be able to spread out a little bit.
Yeah.
In terms of the catering side of stuff, but then we also rent it out for private events, receptions. We've done a bunch of like baby showers, bridal showers, that kind of stuff here. And then
Wow.
sometimes people just have it for reception. Sometimes people do private classes, so they'll bring a group in, and we'll do, wine tasting. We'll do cheese and wine pairing. We'll do how to build a cheese board classes. We'll do all that kind of stuff in the studio, as opposed to at someone's house.
But you still will travel.
Yeah, so it kind of just depends.
Okay, where they are, what they want.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then we also use the studio space for classes that are open to the public. So every month we'll have, 3 or 4 events here. You can buy tickets online and come in. We have different winemakers, cheesemakers, different, themed events, all that kind of fun stuff that happen.
And all that information will be on your website.
All of that information is on our website.
Which
yeah.
is?
Which is CheeseMonsterStudio.com. Yeah.
And they're also on social media, so follow them on Facebook and
Yeah.
Instagram.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So what are you seeing in cheese? Like any kind of trends? I mean,
Totally.
is there a cheese
Things we need to
trend?
know about.
Yes.
Yeah. What are you seeing?
Fun things. A whole bunch of different. Well, first of all, cheese boards are sort of trending in general. Now it's like a really big thing. I feel like every day there are, 10 new cheese board, people that I follow on social media just for,
I
all the
follow
inspo.
at least like 2, I think.
Yeah. But within sort of the cheese community, a couple things. One is sort of unconventional cheese pairings or cheese accompaniments.
Okay.
So, as opposed to just sort of doing a cheese board with just like a bunch of grapes and a couple olives. Don't get me wrong, love grapes, love olives. Obviously, my daughter is
Sick,
Ooh, baby, it's okay. Let's see if she'll go back to sleep. And she's done. All right. Life with a 12-week-old is like being like a bomb specialist. But exactly. But
So what's the
so instead of that,
unconventional?
just doing those things, doing different like candies, so like chocolate covered pretzels I love using, or
Desserts,
even
these are
desserty
desserts,
things.
okay.
Or we can do a lot of cheesemongers I know love using potato chips or like veggie chips, different colored veggie chips as
Okay.
like an alternative to
Crackers.
crackers. So like a gluten-free option, why not just go potato chip as opposed to
Okay.
like $1 million spent on like gluten-free crackers?
Okay, good to know. Did you hear that, peeps?
Yeah.
Potato
love
chips
that.
instead of crackers.
Especially for certain cheeses that are kind of dippable or scoopable, having
Oh,
potato
okay.
chips are really, a nice alternative.
I did a potato chip pairing one time with a bubbly.
Oh, fun!
Because the salty paired with the sweet and the crunchy with the bubbles, it
Yeah.
was just, it was all
absolutely.
kinds of happiness.
That sounds amazing.
But I love the idea of potato chips.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
And then
Alice.
a lot of cheesemongers I know are also using like high quality tinned fish as well as part of their cheese boards. I know that sounds weird, cheese and fish, but
because it's so savory.
it's so savory. And we're not talking about just like opening up a can of chicken of the sea on your like exactly. But there's some very high quality imported tinned fish, either white anchovies or tuna belly or mussels or octopus, or it's like
I saw a whole article, and it was in Travel and Leisure. They did a whole article, and in America, the tinned fish seems like
weird and gross.
But no, that is a big deal, and it is not inexpensive.
Yeah.
And the fish they put in there is
Good.
fabulous.
I mean, if you want to get real fancy with it, you can even do like caviar and like that kind of stuff as well, different fish roes. So that's a really fun alternative as well.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love that. That's an
Yeah.
awesome trend. That's awesome. And then do ask her about the classes too. I know we want to know
Okay,
about that.
so classes.
Yes.
You have classes here where people could come and learn from you right here in your studio, but you
Mhm.
also travel.
Yes.
And so we could, out in parts of Manassas and Broad
No
Run,
Man's Land, yeah.
no man's land, have you come to our home.
Absolutely.
So you do travel,
We
and
do travel, yep.
there are a couple things you could teach us, like the difference between
Ooh,
a cheese board.
a
Mm-hmm.
charcuterie board.
Thank you, because I knew I was going to butcher that. And a grazing table. So
What
you
is
will
the
travel
difference?
and teach us how to make these 3 things.
Totally. Yeah. So basically, cheese board obviously has cheese. Charcuterie is technically cured meats. So some people say charcuterie and they mean like cheese board, but technically it does refer to having meat.
Charcuterie, is that a French word?
It is.
So it's French and it means cured
Cured meats.
Okay.
Yep,
Okay.
exactly right. And then a grazing table is really just a gigantic cheese board.
I've seen on
Yeah.
Pinterest.
Like
And I've seen on Alice's website. I mean, it's just like
monstrous.
rainbows and sunshine and happiness with cheese.
Exactly. Just like a huge, especially if you're having a big party or a wedding or something like that, having a huge cheese board for people to snack on.
So
sort
no
of all
fork
night.
needed. People can just kind of like pick and pick and pick.
Exactly, and it's got a little bit of something for everyone. So we've got some cheese, usually charcuterie, fresh fruit, fresh veggies, maybe some like of these alternative pairings that, I was talking about, nuts and all that kind of fun
And
stuff.
desserts. So
And
you
desserts.
Oh,
yeah,
that's
you
right.
can totally incorporate
All right.
that. Yeah.
So what do we do with when we want to like kind of like close out a tasting or pair a cheese board or a tasting, have some kind of sweet? What would we?
Yeah,
What
absolutely.
would you do?
So I actually love doing dessert and cheese pairings because salty and sweet. Who doesn't love that?
I love that.
Exactly. So my favorite ones, my go-to is blue cheese and dark chocolate.
Okay.
What kind of
cheese,
dark
dark
chocolate?
So it depends.
Like how
You
much
can.
dark? Not
It
trying to be a
depends.
nerd.
No, it's. I mean, you can. Basically, you can go as dark as you like.
Okay.
I think that dark is better paired than milk, just because you get a bit more earthiness, and that's really what you're after with the
Right.
blue
It's more
cheese.
creamy.
Yeah.
Exactly. But that being said, I mean, if all you have is milk chocolate, I don't think
We
you're
can
gonna
make it work.
hate it. Yeah,
Okay.
it'll be okay. But
Gouda is one of my favorites. I
Yeah.
love 18-month age Gouda, not
So
smoked, but just
good.
what do you do with that?
And so that's
in
a-
case I was curious about dinner tonight.
Oh,
What would you
right.
do? What would you pair with that?
So Gouda, I love doing an aged Gouda with butterscotch sauce, a homemade butterscotch sauce.
Butterscotch.
Yeah,
How's that?
because it's got like a sweet and a little bit saltiness in
It does, for sure,
in
salty.
in both the butterscotch and then also in the Gouda. So Gouda has a lot of butterscotch
Gouda
and
and butterscotch.
caramelly sorts of notes as
How
well.
do you do butterscotch without doing like too much? Is it just like a tiny
I
piece
just
of
do like
butterscotch?
usually I'll do a sauce and I'll drizzle.
Okay.
Ah.
So homemade butterscotch sauce.
Homemade butterscotch
drizzled over
sauce.
some Gouda.
Like
Yeah.
I've seen honey on blue cheese, but
Like
like
that.
with a tiny amount, not
You
a
sort
bowl.
of just have to eat a bunch of it and see what ratio
Okay.
works best for
Oh,
you.
I'm
I
up
mean,
for that
bummer.
task.
But
Because
yeah,
I'm also
that's-
now thinking a dark chocolate mini cupcake with a butterscotch frosting,
Yeah.
which would go.
That would be
which
great with
pair
either
well
of
with
those.
either.
Yeah,
it
either
would
blue
cut,
cheese
it
or-
would definitely make.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Oh, I
really
love
good.
Coming to a
that.
cheese board near you
Or
soon.
if you wanted to do a dark chocolate cupcake with like a espresso or coffee, that and
Oh
blue
my gosh, I
cheese
can't
is
believe we haven't done
also
that
really
yet.
good. Yeah.
Well, I have, but we haven't with a wine pairing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we can.
We should.
What about
Yeah.
salted
So
caramel? If
Yes,
we're on, yes,
100%.
100%. Okay, because I definitely
Yeah.
do salted caramels.
Yeah,
Oh,
for
I
sure.
love this.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Alice, this has been so awesome.
Yeah,
I want to
thank
thank
you
you so much for
guys.
Thank
tolerating
you,
this.
Olive.
No,
You
thank
did
So
you.
that.
again, the classes, you have a whole bunch of different classes.
Exactly.
Some are in-house. Some people could schedule, coordinate with you, or you or one of your people to
Right.
come into their home and do
Exactly.
classes. Doing also a grazing board
Mm-hmm.
at their home that you would
Right.
build that on
Yep.
site.
Yep, exactly.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, all those fun things.
Oh my gosh, this
This
is
is
fantastic.
awesome.
This
Thank
is-
you guys
thank you
so
so
much.
much.
This
You
is
guys,
so
I thought
having
we were going to
us.
have time to go over a grazing board. Gene and I are going to like hover
We're
back
gonna have
into
to
DC
come back.
Do
and do
part
a
two.
grazing board
Part two.
special.
Part
Yeah.
3 if you
Part 3
consider.
technically.
Yeah, and the grazing board might not be as big as I imagine, like eating most of it.
Yeah. Well, we'll
Make
try
it
to
work.
film that before.
Before I start eating it.
So bye.
There
Thank
you
you
go.
for
Bye,
watching.
guys.
Bye.